does it mean to you to have an event like this in your community?
It just shows that we have a voice, that we have a community, that everyone is here for the right reasons, and we're not walking around stopping, showing our anger towards some of the stuff that's going on. We're just here being ourselves and enjoying the day and enjoying fellowship and community.
Welcome to the Dairyland Patriot podcast. The Dairyland Patriot is proud to be kicking off its very own podcast with this episode. Fittingly, the topic is Pride Month. We're going to talk about Appleton's Pride Fest, planning and execution. But first, we're going to cover what local legislators have been up to in Madison. In early June, Wisconsin lawmakers unleashed a flurry of pro-LGBTQ+ legislation. Because all Wisconsin citizens deserve equal rights and opportunities under the law, and these bills make meaningful steps towards making that a reality. Just in time for Pride Month, Wisconsin Democratic lawmakers introduced the Equality Agenda, a package of legislation aimed at improving equality and safety for the LGBTQ+ community. Senator Kristen Dassler-Alfheim said, "I'm proud to have co-authored this legislation, but I find it frustrating that the LGBTQ+ community continues to have to fight for the same rights that everyone else takes for granted. This country is founded on the principle that we are all created equal. This package ensures that Wisconsin's Constitution and statutes reflect that." The Equality Agenda includes two joint resolutions. One designates June 2025 as Pride Month. The other removes marriage restrictions from Wisconsin's Constitution. LRB 3041/1. This joint resolution recognizes June 2025 as LGBTQ Pride Month in Wisconsin. June is historically celebrated as LGBTQ Pride Month in commemoration of the Stonewall Uprising, which occurred on June 28, 1969. Recognizing Pride Month fosters an atmosphere of inclusion, acceptance, and celebration in our state. The resolution acknowledges the advancements made towards equality for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and other queer people, and the work that remains to be done. LRB 2031. This constitutional amendment, proposed to the 2025 legislature on first consideration, eliminates the constitutional restriction that only a marriage between one man and one woman shall be valid or recognized as a marriage in this state. A proposed constitutional amendment requires adoption by two successive legislatures and ratification by the people before it can take effect. In addition to the two resolutions, the Democratic legislatures introduced 4 draft bills that provide equity and protections for the LGBTQ+ community. LRB 3040/1 prohibits conversion therapy aimed at changing a minor's sexual orientation or a gender identity and subjecting licensed professionals who practice it to professional discipline. LRB 3124/1 eliminates the use of a gay or trans panic as a defense by persons accused of crimes. LRB 1684 provides grants to school boards to provide training in LGBTQIA+ rights to school counselors and school social workers. LRB 0842 makes technical updates to various Wisconsin laws about married couples, including laws on adoption and on in vitro fertilization, to ensure they apply to same-sex couples. Representative Lee Snodgrass says, "More than ever, we must take steps to ensure equal rights and protections under the law for our Wisconsin LGBTQ+ community and their families. As we've seen basic rights and freedoms threatened or denied at the federal level, it is important that Wisconsin take our own legislative steps to make sure that every resident of Wisconsin can live authentically as themselves, without threat to their marriage, parentage, mental health, or safety. All Wisconsin citizens deserve equal rights and opportunities under the law, and these bills make meaningful steps towards making that a reality. Pride Month, celebrated every June, commemorates the Stonewall riots in New York City, which began on June 28, 1969, and sparked the modern gay rights movement. The first Pride marches, held in June 1970, marked the one-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. Over time, these events evolved into a month-long celebration of the LGBTQ+ community. Governor Tony Evers signed Executive Order 264, ordering that the Progress Pride flag be raised over the Wisconsin State Capitol during June in celebration of Pride Month.
I think for Pride and for the LGBTQIA+ community, it's visibility, right? It's an opportunity for people to say, we're here, and in the old 80s quotes, we're here, we're queer, get used to us, yes. Right? Yes. But it's more like we're here. And thank you to the other city partners and ADI for saying, we also want you to be visible. So we're gonna go right down the farmer's market. Sure. And I also think it showcases personally, as you were discussing, that feel of progressiveness, right? That feel that we're here. And again, it's not necessarily for others, it's for us. Like for us right. To feel that the community has said yes. Yeah. You know, because they could say no. And so there is more of that feel like we're accepted, we're doing this, and we hope you support us too.
Fox Valley Pride Festival creates a space, highlights a culture. To get a sense of just how big the Fox Valley Pride Festival has become, consider this. Dana Johnson and his team began working on the event in June of last year. What started off as a picnic a few years back will realize its fullest potential to date when the festival kicks off on June 21st. Johnson, Fox Valley Pride's president, started thinking about making the festival a bigger event 2 years ago when the group was called Appleton Pride. Back then, the committee consisted of just a handful of people. That committee has more than doubled in size, as have the festivities and the musical acts. Johnson expects the crowd to reach its highest level as well. Nearly 4,000 are anticipated to attend the Jones Park extravaganza. I thought, we could make this a bit more inclusive, says Johnson. It's been a year-long process. We take about 2 weeks off after the festival, and then we start again. We meet monthly for the first few months, and then it becomes every other week until May, and then it's a couple of hours every week. This year, for the first time, the festival will begin with a promenade down College Avenue, starting at noon at the History Museum and culminating at the Houdini Plaza, where it coincides with the Make Music Day dance party. Then it's on to Jones Park at 1 p.m. for 7 hours of music, dance, games, and speeches. It ends with a drag show. More than 40 sponsors and 125 vendors support the event, as does the community at large. Appleton Downtown Inc., for instance, was thrilled when Fox Valley Pride approached them with the idea of the promenade, despite the fact that it will travel right through the heart of the Appleton Farm Market. It all points to a community that is not only accepting of diversity, but openly embraces and celebrates it. For Johnson and Fox Valley Pride, the annual festival is an opportunity to try to expand the gay community's visibility. For me, this creates a space. No matter what age you are, no matter if you identify in the community or you're an ally, that you belong, and that there are people from diverse backgrounds who will love you, who will support you, Johnson says. Today is just one day, but now you've just learned about all the resources and you've been entertained by people that you can now follow who have positive messages, who will support you for the next 365 days until we do it all over, So for me, that's the goal. It's that people feel like they are loved, respected, and supported. This year's festival comes against the background of hate. The Fox Valley Pride Festival is the area's most notable manifestation of Pride Month, which, every June since 1970, has commemorated the Stonewall riots in New York City that gave rise to the modern gay rights movement. This year's event will take place against the backdrop of the Trump administration's strident policies against diversity, equity, and inclusion. From day one, the administration has stifled DEI via financial threats and outright firings of people not willing to cooperate. The Trump administration's greatest attacks, though, have been against the trans community. From attempting to ban trans and non-binary folks from serving in the military, to outlawing gender-affirming care, to resurrecting the dead names of those who are transitioning. Dead names are the names given at birth to trans and non-binary folks who often take on new names. This creates myriad legal and financial barriers and is seen in the LGBTQ+ community as an attempt to cancel trans people. Johnson, who also works in child welfare at the Department of Children and Families and is a member of the Outagamie County Board, has to walk a fine line in all his roles in the community, though he is unflinching in his advocacy. Fox Valley Pride does do some advocacy, but we're not naturally a political organization that will go out and do advocacy, he says. We have lots of partners that do that, sure, but I think the work that we do inherently has a politicalness to it, because we're often having to fight against oppression or the oppression that's happening under the current federal administration. Johnson moved to Appleton 12 years ago when he met his partner, now his husband. At the time, he didn't see a lot of spaces for the gay community. When he talks about acceptance in Appleton and the Fox Valley, he talks about layers, noting that it is all fairly nuanced. Mostly, he sees Appleton as diverse and accommodating of other cultures, citing the Hmong community and African Heritage Incorporated. But he admits that he sometimes misses the greater sense of safety he feels in Madison and Milwaukee, two cities he has lived in. Last June, FVP decided to expand its reach and hold the festival in Neenah. The organization received a hate letter from a Neenah resident, essentially suggesting that the gay community didn't belong in a public park. It bothers me, in a sense, that the mentality still exists, Johnson says, that you wouldn't want people to have a festival, and we're not asking anyone to change. We're not even asking you to care. We just want to have our culture festival, and you could come or not. It surprises me at times. Johnson ran for mayor in 2020 and knocked, he estimates, on 10,000 doors. While he says he rarely met open hostility, he did meet some voters who had made his sexual orientation an issue. He appreciates that the community pushed back hard on one of his fellow board members after that person made an overtly transphobic comment during a board meeting a couple of years back. But he also admits to not always feeling safe right in the heart of Appleton. I have felt like Appleton, compared to other communities I've lived in, was like, wow, the capital of gay people and really significant inclusive community, he says. But to this day, I'm pretty out and proud. I will not walk down College Avenue in the summer holding my husband's hand because every time I do, inevitably someone screams something homophobic out their window. Not that I'm into public displays of affection in general, but there are just those moments you have to be on guard. I just never felt that in Milwaukee or Madison. So for me, that for a city this size and how inclusive I think it is or thought it was, it surprises me at times. Johnson takes the long view on society's acceptance, noting that the original gay rights movement pretty significantly advanced the cause before it saw a pullback under Reagan and then a reemergence again in the 90s. Gay marriage became legal in 2015. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Johnson sees society currently in another step back phase. In my neighborhood, there are more signs that espouse hate, and you see Confederate flags hoisted on the back of pickup trucks driving down College Avenue, he says. And you see the anti-Semitism and the white supremacy. And even if you're in another marginalized community, like the gay community, you begin to feel like you're still targeted, even though they may not be targeting someone else. I get completely emotional. Which is why Johnson feels such purpose in organizing something as uplifting as the Pride Festival. He's excited about the promenade, which he says began as a simple 5K fundraiser until people decided that a parade would be so much more fun. It's just another way to say, we're here, Johnson says. I think it showcases us personally, and even if it's not necessarily for others, The community has said yes, because they could have said no. So we're doing this, and we hope you support us too. Michael Grabner kicks off the music at 1 p.m. at Jones Park. Among other musicians are the Traveling Suitcase, Cat and the Hurricane, Venus de Mars, and Rye Hudson. There will be an ongoing cornhole tournament, and the drag show starts at 6:30. Johnson promises, or fervently hopes anyway, that Fox Valley Pride will not need to use the rain date of June 28th. Last year at Neenah, it was pretty much a washout. June 21st will mark the fruition of 50 weeks of planning and training volunteers, of procuring vendors and sponsors of musical acts, of obtaining all the proper city permits, of getting Jones Park ready, of making sure security knows how to handle potential situations, of making sure that everyone has a great time, and Fox Valley Pride is providing the optimal showcase for a gay community that sometimes feels like it has to go a little bit beyond to be accepted. Because the converse of that is you're silent, Johnson says. Ultimately for me, when I go to the Fox Valley Pride Festival, we're having our day, and someone will come up to me and say, this is the first Pride I've ever been to, and they're 65 years old, and they drove 2.5 hours to come to this one, yeah? Or you have that 9-year-old kid who doesn't know yet where they're at or what they identify, and they say, this was really cool. There are faith communities here, and there are health resources here, and there are books about me, and there are people singing on the stage that I identify as. This is just nothing you can buy, and that's priceless. And by Sunday, I'm exhausted. And every time, I get completely emotional. Heat is no match for community, love, and self-acceptance at Fox Valley Pride Festival. Even the political statements and words of defiance were inflected with joy and perseverance, as well as an appreciation for the show of support from the city and the community. Dana Johnson spent the few weeks leading up to the Fox Valley Pride Festival willing away the rain that washed out last year's event and forced it indoors. He got his wish, and then some. In fact, the few clouds that drifted over the open expanse of Jones Park on Saturday were welcome. It was the heat that threatened to tamp down attendance at this year. Yet heat indexes that topped 100 degrees proved to be no discouragement for the LGBTQ+ community and its allies, as several thousand folks turned out to listen to music, speeches, and poetry, and to celebrate diversity and tolerance. I couldn't be more humbled that over 3,000 people braved the heat to show up and be together, in community, showing their authentic love to inspire others that we have a supportive and loving community, said Johnson, president of Fox Valley Pride. It was beautiful energy, memories made that can carry us through times when we feel backlash and targeted, and all in all, a demonstration that allyship is ever more important. It began with a promenade down College Avenue through the farm market and concluded with the drag show. There was an after party at McFleshman's. In between, 5 area bands composed largely of musicians from the LGBTQ+ community braved a relentless sun and took the stage at Jones Park as a cornhole tournament got underway at the west end of the park beyond the dozens and dozens of vendor tents. More than 130 vendors participated. The Fox Valley Pride Festival realized its fullest potential to date on Saturday as early organizers from 5 years back reminisced about how it all started. 5 years ago, we had a small protest downtown over an electric sign with a homophobic message, said Summer Johnson-Lohr of Fox Valley Pride. And we looked at each other and we said, why don't we have a Pride Festival? So there were about 30 or 40 people just sitting on the ground making bracelets in a torrential downpour. And that was our first Pride here at Jones Park. We shared stories, we shared our testimonies, we came out to each other, we listened to each other, and that was the most community I think I've ever seen in my life. And now look at where we are today. Just look around you. This is amazing. Politics was unavoidable this year. Though the Pride Festival has never been overtly political, folks, including musicians, were much less inclined to hold back this year given the threats against the LGBTQ+ community from the current administration. Mostly, though, even the political statements and words of defiance were inflicted with joy and perseverance, as well as an appreciation for the show of support from the city and the community.
What do you feel like this means for the LGBTQ plus community?
Honestly, I think anytime we have the ability to celebrate and bring up the joy and the resilience of our community, the better. Because especially now in Wisconsin and everywhere else, the LGBTQ plus community, especially our transgender friends, are under attack. So it's a great opportunity for us to celebrate with people who care about us and just lift it up.
What about you?
Ditto on that. I would just add, a lot of times hate comes from a sense of fear, and fear comes from not understanding. So show up, come on down, learn to understand, and I'll bet you that fear disappears. There's not a single person in this place that's scared.
Yeah.
They're just warm, lovely, joyous people. Come on down.
Among the set of speakers, after local songwriter Michael Grabner performed the opening set of the day, were Megan Pickett, the chair of the physics department at Lawrence University. Pickett said being trans was not the most interesting thing about her, but that it was worth celebrating. She said that no one will remember the thugs and fascists and the zealots trying to erase the trans community from history. Everyone remembers Rosa, she added, referring to Rosa Parks, who defied Jim Crow laws in Alabama and refused to surrender her bus seat. No one remembers the bus driver that held her back. I know the world is on fire. Believe me, I know the forces arrayed against us are great and daunting, but I know this too. We own the future of the world. Local poet Ria Di Peeples delivered a fiery poem.
I wrote the first part of this poem over a decade ago, during a time when living in Appleton was not on my radar again. I wrote the end this morning with some help from Chapel Roan, thinking about the resurgence of queer joy and rebellion that keeps saving me and that will define our communities forever. Thank you again for having me, and happy Pride. One, I found a boy at the bottom of the river. Oh no, I do not want that. Two, I found a boy at the bottom of the river. She was just like me. She too was 17 years later, and I find their necks still buried in my bed. They were beautiful. Remember? Three, you know how your hands keep getting numb sometimes? I pulled mine from a closet and the skeletons took needles to my skin. I wondered how many women I had to be with to get the feeling back in these fingers of mine. Instead, men make a mockery out of my memory. When I tell them about the dead boys in my memory, they just try a little bit harder. After all, who doesn't love a body that only knows how to bleed dry without dying for? In my hometown, I find the cemetery, and I find the boys, and I find the homophobes, and I find my memory. I always wonder what happened to my possibility before the dead boys were dead, before I woke up covered in hands, like the night the newspaper reporter called and asked me, what you want from us, you queer kids who want too much. And I thought about my body, about the way it doesn't sleep, about them dying like they did, about my knees, about the men, about all these men, the way my body moves through alleyways and bars and beds with other bodies who salivate over my grief. And I said nothing. Just whispered, I am 17, and I don't want to wake up dead with my limbs sprawled out across suburbia, but it came out more like, I don't know, to be left alone for once. 5, I tossed an entire town into the ocean. I called it self-preservation. 10 years later, and I'm on a dance floor in Minneapolis, at a 30-plus party called Mature Content. Entry requires having lived long enough to have seen some shit, and we wear it on our bodies. The desperate dance of knowing we're always running out of time. Chronically ill and yet unkillable, we bury our friends and orbit the moon, lay down in front of the tanks that attempt to bastardize our parades, and then kiss our lovers and children goodnight. God, what have we done? Black lights and a mirrored disco ball, every night's another reason why I left it all. We sing together. Euphoria overcomes the dark and sweaty dance floor. A sapphic rebellion birthing the kind of freedom fascists will never know, and I pity them for not learning how to grieve like this. So afraid of their own mortality, they'd rather us all die than admit how good it feels to be held sometimes. In the quiet between songs, I befriend the ghosts of my hometown and live there again. Kiss my lovers and my children goodnight, alive. Limbs sprawled out across suburbia. Mama, I'm just having fun while we, thank God, still dance at the club. Thank you.
Mel Davis of Rainbow Alliance Advocacy noted that sometimes people in the LGBTQ plus community must hide to survive, but that other times they shine and they thrive. I ask myself, how do we stand tall in the face of oppression, especially when that oppression might come from those closest to us, from our family, from our friends, sometimes even from within ourselves, Davis said. And then I remember, queer love is unconditional. Queer joy is unshakable. Queer youth are unyielding and queerness is unfading. The Traveling Suitcase, Cat and the Hurricane, Venus de Mars, and Rye Hudson also performed. This year's Fox Valley Pride Festival had 3 key ingredients, Johnson said: visibility, cultural celebration, and authentic love. The first Pride Promenade to our walk down College Avenue is a milestone in the history of visibility and support for our LGBTQIA2S+ community and culture, particularly in Appleton. Every performer, speaker, and even the commendation received from Representative Snodgrass and Senator Alfheim had messages of cultural celebration and appreciation for the community. That's all for today's episode of the Dairyland Patriot podcast. We hope you will like, subscribe, and return for more. Thanks for listening.